Hey everyone, welcome to our online experience. My name is John Rakowski. I'm the Goodrich campus pastor, and I just want to welcome you on today. Thanks so much for joining us. This is a really exciting week for us here at Bridgewood Church because this weekend we are regathering together in person, and we are so excited to see everyone. We're still committed to doing our online experiences for you, but we would so love for you to be here in person worshiping together with us. So in fact, you can already register for our next weekend experience at both of our Goodrich and Clarkson locations. So hop onto our website to be able to do that and to reserve your seat, and hopefully we will see you next week. But today we've got a great day in store for us. We're going to jump into some worship in just a moment, and then Pastor Kurt, our lead pastor, is going to lead us in an amazing and encouraging message for us today. So let's all just get ready, grab your family, bring everybody together, and let's prepare to worship God together this morning.
Well, hey, good morning. Thanks for joining us to worship God together. This song just tells the story of what God has done for us. And so we're just going to respond by thanking and praising Him for who He is, all He's done in our lives. So let's worship Him together. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I made. And I was breathing but not alive. And all my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb. It was my tomb till I made. He called our names. You called my name. And I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You've done for me, Jesus. Sing, now your mercy has saved my soul. And now your mercy has saved my soul. Yes, it has, God. And now your freedom is all that I know. Yes, it is. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, you called my name. For my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Running towards you now, Father.
I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. And when you called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the dark. we sing that song together? I searched the world. And I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and you put me back together. Yes, you did. And every desire is now satisfied. Here in your love we sing there's nothing better. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, oh, better than you. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Oh, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Yes, you do. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. No, we sing there's nothing. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, no, nothing is better than you.
Come on, this is what he does for us. Sing it out. You turn my morning. You turn morning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. Sing it again. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into gardens. You turn bones into armies. Oh, you turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing, Jesus, better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Come on, tell him. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. No, there's nothing, oh, better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you.
After some prayer and after talking and meeting with our pastoral team, we have made the decision to not have services live this weekend in our Clarkston or our Goodrich location, but that we will do the services online. And that is going to include our weekend services, our groups, and our midweek classes. That we really are encouraging you during these times to not only grow close together, but also to grow close in your relationship to Christ. Social distancing doesn't have to mean spiritual distancing.
Hey everybody.
Well, hey everyone.
Hey kids.
Hey Bridgewood youth.
Hey everyone.
Well, good morning Bridgewood and welcome.
Welcome everybody.
Welcome to Bridgewood Church Online.
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 To our online experience here at Bridgewood Church.
We are one church in many places and spaces.
So close to Christ that
Everyone in the world will know Him. We are the technology generation.
You guys ready for another day? Woo! The word pandemic is not bigger than my God.
God cannot be locked down.
We really are encouraging you during these times to not only grow close together, but also to grow close in your relationship to Christ. Social distancing doesn't have to mean spiritual distancing.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bridgewood Church Online. We are super excited to make another transition this weekend as we go to live in-person gatherings. But for those of you that are watching online right now, we want you to know that we're going to continue to bring you our messages each week online. But for those of you that are waiting to come back in person, we want you to know, go ahead and register for your seats. Come on back and join with us. It is an amazing weekend to finally be all back together and also ministering to you wherever you're at today. So listen, What you just saw a moment ago is a little taste of what we've been through the last 3 to 4 months, as it's been unlike any other time that I have ever experienced. I know probably for you as well. And I am so thankful that God is making another transition for us. And that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to take you to Joshua chapter 4. And Joshua chapter 4 is another one of those transitional moments where they're coming out of something or going into something. And that's what we've talked a lot about over these few months together, is transition. How do we come into and how do we come out of? And God had really given me this word for the first weekend that we were going to come back together. We were going to come out of this season that we've been in into a new season. And God really spoke to me this word from Joshua chapter 4. So I want you to grab your Bible, get your device. Let's look at Joshua chapter 4. And here, God is taking the people of Israel from the desert to their destiny. I want you to just put that in the comments right now. From the desert to the destiny. So this is one of those places of transition where they're about to leave what they have been a part of for a long time. God is now taking them into a new season and a new place. And so Joshua chapter 4 picks up that story. Actually, I want to go back to the last verse of Joshua chapter 3. Joshua 3 verse 17. That way it will give us a running start into Joshua chapter 4. So let's read it together. Joshua 3 verse 17, it says this: "The priest who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground." Now let's just stop for just a moment and unpack a few things. If you're new to the Bible and you're wondering, what is the Ark of the Covenant? Maybe you've even seen it on a Hollywood movie. Listen, the Ark of the Covenant was a box. It was a container. Now, it wasn't just an ordinary box or container. It was overlaid with gold. It was made of the finest of jewels. But it was a box and a container that represented the presence and power of God. And so wherever you see the Ark of the Covenant, it's really a signal and a sign to us that God's presence and power was there in the midst of the people. You say, why don't we have the Ark of the Covenant today? Because there's no longer a need for a box or a container, because you and I have now become the box and the container that the presence and the power of God dwells in. Isn't that really cool when you think about it? But watch what it says. It says, as the priest went holding the Ark of the Covenant into the middle of the Jordan, it says the whole nation completed the crossing. Now think about that. That is an absolute miracle. Like for some of you, it's a lot to ask you to just get yourself and maybe 2 or 3 kids dressed and into a car and here to church on time or to school. Think about what Joshua was having to do. Get over 1 million people across a flowing river that's at flood stage to the other side. That is a miracle in and of itself. But it says there that the whole nation crossed through the Jordan River and made it to the other side. You know what that says to me? That says that on our journey towards our destiny, that you and I are going to face obstacles. There are obstacles of all shapes and sizes that are going to try to prevent us from getting to the place that God wants us to be. For the people of Israel here, it's a river, an overflowing river. For you, it may be a completely different obstacle. But I want you to know that you cannot just stop or avoid the obstacles in life. It's God's plan that He would take us through whatever obstacles are in our way. So here's what I want you to put in the comments. Say, don't leave me behind. Go ahead, do it right now. I'm watching you. Don't leave me behind. Because here's the deal. An entire generation of people got left on the other side of the Jordan River. Think about that. There was a whole generation of people that just complained to God on a regular basis, criticized the leadership and the decisions that they were making, and refused to follow and obey God. So here's what God said. God said, you're going to die in the wilderness. You're not going to go to the place of destiny that I have for you. So an entire generation that was led by Moses. Moses himself was actually part of that generation that got left on the other side of the Jordan River. So I don't want you to get left behind. I don't want to get left behind, because what was meant to only take 3 days ended up taking 40 years. And listen, the same is going to be, the same is true for you and I. If we don't learn what God is trying to teach us, we're going to get left behind. We're going to be on the wrong side of the place that God has for us. So it says in Joshua chapter 4, verse 1, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each of the tribes, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you're going to stay tonight. So check this out, right? The priests go right to the middle of the Jordan. And we've talked a lot about the middle, haven't we? That it takes faith to be in the middle. You see, it doesn't take faith when you're crossing the finish line. It takes faith when you're in the middle. Think about this now. The priests are in the middle of the Jordan River, and the waters are being held back. I can't imagine what that must have felt like to stand at a place where you can see the waters that if they were to cut loose at any moment would literally destroy you and wash you away. But God was holding them back. They stood right in the middle of that Jordan River with faith and trust that God was making a way for them to get from one side to the other side. And that's exactly how it is for you and I. It takes faith in the middle. Think about these last 4 months. It doesn't take a whole lot of faith right now because we're on our way out. We're crossing through these past 4 months. But think about where you were in April. Think about where you were in May. Did you have faith? That was the middle. That's when we couldn't see the finish line. That's when we didn't know where this was going to go and what was going to happen. That's where faith and trust matters. But now they're crossing out of. They're coming out of the Jordan River. And they're on the other side. And so in verse 4, Joshua calls together 12 men that he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe. And he said to them, go over to the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you take up a stone on your shoulder according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. Watch this now. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. Think about this. God controls the flow. He determines how we are going to get through the obstacles that are in front of us. Because God was controlling the flow. God is the one that cut off the waters and made a way where there was no way. And it's only God who determines for you and I how we're going to get through the obstacles on the journey that we face. And so therefore it takes trust. It takes faith. It takes obedience. in moments like that to know that God is controlling the situation. So watch what happened. The Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the Jordan according to the number of tribes of the Israelites as the Lord told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to their camp and they put them down. Joshua then set up 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests were who carried the Ark of the Covenant. And they are there to this day. The Israelites did exactly what Joshua commanded them to do. They didn't ask a lot of questions. They didn't criticize the decision that he was making. But they did exactly what Joshua told them to do. Put this into perspective for a moment, because for 40 years they've been wandering in the desert. Now after 40 years, they finally get a chance to cross the Jordan River and get on the other side. And the moment they get on the other side, they're camping now in a city called Gilgal, where they literally could look forward and see the promised land that God had been talking to them about. Like, they are right on the edge. They're in the shadows of their destiny. And Joshua looks at them and he tells them, I want you to stop and take a pause. Like, stop what you're doing, pause for just a moment. I want you to go back into the Jordan that you just crossed through. And I want you to go to the very middle, the very place that requires the most faith. And I want you to gather up 12 stones. And I want you to bring them over here to the camp. In other words, here's what God was saying. God was saying, I want you to go back and get something that symbolizes what you've just gone through. Go back and get a stone that you just walked over from the Jordan River that was at flood stage that you crossed over. Go get those stones and bring them back, because those stones are going to symbolize what you just went through. And then set it up in a place where you will never, ever forget what I did for you. That is powerful. Like, that is absolutely powerful, that when they finally get to the other side, Joshua tells them, stop and pause. We got to do something. We got to go back and we got to pull something out of what we went through. And we need to set it up and create a memorial, an altar to God, so that whenever we see that, we will never, ever forget that God didn't fail us, that God was faithful, that God protected us, that God was right there with us in the middle of the situation that we never thought we were going to make it through, that God never failed. He was with us. And I want you to go back to verse 6, and I want you to see this. Look at what verse 6 says. It says, in the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off and people walked across on dry ground. What is the story that you and I are going to tell? That's the title. The story that you will tell. Because that's really the question that we've got to ask ourselves. When we look back at 2020 and your kids ask you, what was that like? When somebody talks about the first part of 2020, what are you going to say? What are you going to tell them? Are you going to tell them that it was the craziest time that you ever lived? Are you going to talk to them about the fear and the worry that seemed to consume you at times? Are you going to talk about all the things that you couldn't do? What is the story that you and I are going to tell? I think it's really powerful that it was important that Joshua and the people didn't just hurry through. They didn't just run through. When they finally make it to the other side, like, we don't want anything to do with the past, let's just keep going. If you know anything about me, I'm the kind of person that when I get going, I don't like to stop. I don't like to take a pause. If you've ever traveled with me, you know that. I don't like to stop for a bathroom break. I don't even like to stop for food unless it's just for a few seconds. And then I want to get back on my way and I want to go to where I'm anticipating going. Stopping and pausing is not what I want to do. But it was important to God, and it was important to Joshua that he told the people to stop. And he told them to pause and do something so that they would tell the story of the faithfulness and the power of God. That's powerful. That's powerful because I think life is already hurrying on. I see people already that it's almost like these past 4 months didn't happen at all. And they are finally out and about. And it's almost like nothing happened. And they're hurrying to the things that they used to do and that they've wanted to do that they couldn't do. And I'm not really sure that we've really taken in what God has done for us. It's really, really important that they built a memorial to God. So you say, why was that important? Well, Joshua tells us. Look at verse 21. He said to the Israelites, so in the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them. He was telling them, you're going to tell a story, but I want you to get the story right. I want you to know what the story is. That Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you, just like he did the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we all crossed over. So this isn't the first time that God made a way through a river or a sea. It's not the first time that he ever cut off the water and held it back. He did it in the Red Sea. He's doing it now again in the Jordan. He's making a way where there was no way. But verse 24, Joshua tells us why this is so important. Watch what he says. He says, he did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. Why did he do that? Why did he want them to stop and pause? Why did he want them to tell a story of God's faithfulness so whenever they saw those stones, they would remember that God made a way for them? Why? Because he says two things. He wanted them to know that the hand of God is powerful, that there is nothing that is too difficult for God. There is nothing that God cannot do, that God is all powerful, and that they might always fear the Lord, that they might always have an awe and a reverence and an honor for God. And our younger generation, the generation in which we're living, needs to know that. If there was ever a time that the generation needs to know that God is powerful and that we need to fear the Lord, it's the generation that we're living. I love what Psalm 145 and verses 3 and 4 say. It says, great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. One generation commends your works to another. That means one generation tells the next generation of God's mighty acts and of God's power and of God's faithfulness. Because if that generation doesn't see it and experience it for themselves, faith could skip a generation. We could have an entire generation get left behind and miss out on the destiny that God has for them. So it was so important, not only to God, but to Joshua, that they stopped and they paused and they remembered that God never failed them, that God was faithful, that God provided, that God protected them. And listen, God knew the battles that were ahead of them. He knew that even though he was bringing them into their destiny, there were a lot of battles that they were still going to have to fight. And listen, the same is true for you and I. God has an incredible plan and destiny for our lives, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have to cross through some obstacles and that we're not going to have to fight some battles. And so when you think about it, God knew exactly what he was doing, that he wanted this generation to know that he was powerful. Why? Because they were going to face some powerful battles in the next few years. And they were going to go into those battles knowing that if God got us through the Jordan, if God took us out of the desert, then God could help us win this battle. And that they would also fear the Lord. Meaning that they would have enough reverence and awe that they would do what God would tell them to do without hesitation. That they wouldn't question God, even when it didn't make sense to them. And we see this in the very first battle that they face in this new season, this new territory. The Battle of Jericho. God told them to do something that made no sense at all. But because the people saw the faithfulness of God and they feared God, they followed and they obeyed. They did exactly what Joshua told them to do. And they had a great victory as a result of it. But in the very next city, they didn't listen to God. They didn't fear God. One man decided that he would do what he thought was best rather than what God said, and they had a terrible defeat. So you and I need to learn that God is powerful and to fear the Lord, to listen to him and to follow him and to obey him, even at times when we're full of fear, even at times where we can't see the finish line, even at times when we're up against the biggest obstacles and battles of our life, that we can trust God and that we can follow him. And God spoke to my heart, and this is what he said. He said, Kurt, the moment that you come out of this season, I want you to lead the church in a moment just like this, where I want you to have them stop. I want you to have them pause for a moment. Before you just hurry through, before you just move on, I want you to stop. And I want you to have a moment where you go back into what you just came out of and you take something that symbolizes what you went through. And you bring it to the other side so that you have a story to tell. So that when you look back and when your children ask you, what was it like? What was it like during that pandemic? What was it like in 2020? That you're going to have a reminder. And I thought to myself, what symbolizes what we have gone through over the last 4 months? And so here's what I came up with. Probably the thing that you and I could take away from all of this is a mask, right? Like, doesn't a mask, the mask is like the stone was to the people of Israel. And Joshua said, go back and take something that will symbolize what you just went through. And I thought, God, this mask symbolizes what we have been through over the last 4 months. And he said, I want you to keep it as a reminder, as a symbol, as a memorial that God was faithful to you, that God provided and he protected you. And so here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to lead us as a church into this moment and just say, God, we're going to stop and we're going to pause for a minute. And we're going to pull something out of what we've gone through as a memorial, a reminder to us that when we see this in the future, when our children ask us, we're going to know exactly what this meant. And so here's what I'm asking you to do. I know for those of you that aren't here in person with us, I want you to get a mask. You can find one. You can do this later. Do it whenever you can. But find your mask that maybe you've worn or you've had in your car or in your home over the last few months. I want you to take it and I simply want you to think about some words that describe how God has made a way for you or provided for you through that experience. And I want you to write them right on your mask. I don't know about you, but if you would go into my office, I collect things from from experiences that I have gone through in life. I have things that when I look at, it immediately takes me back. I have a stone from Israel, a stone right from the valley of Elah where David fought Goliath. And when I see that stone, it reminds me of not only my experience in Israel, but the battles that I have faced in life. And so I'm going to put this mask along with some of those other memorials that I have. And when people ask me, what's that mask for? I have a story to tell. And I have a story to tell of what God did for us and how He made a way and how powerful He is and how we need to trust Him. Because I know for a lot of us, our worries never came true, did they? The fear that we felt didn't stop us. The moments that we thought, God, I can't see a way out, God has made a way out, hasn't He? So God has been faithful and God has been powerful. And so I want you to do that. And over the next few moments, you're going to hear a song. The song really is going to be a song that really just helps us take a few minutes to think about what are some words that describe what God did for us in these past 4 months. And I want to give you an opportunity to either think them or write them down right now or just let God minister to you. So as you listen to the words of this song, I want you to be reminded that God made a way for you where there was no way, and that God provided and cared for you and got you to the other side. And now we're ready to go forward to whatever God has for us, but we know that we're going to face more in the future. And yet this can be a powerful reminder that God is faithful and that He will take care of us. So listen to the words of this song and let God minister to you right now.
The hour is dark and it's hard to see what you are doing here in the ruins and where this will lead. Oh, but I know down through the years I'll look back on this moment and see your hand on it and know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you've won and how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll testify of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you parted, the waves that I walked, singing, oh, oh, my God did not fail. Oh, it's the story I'll tell, singing, oh, I know it is well. Oh, it's the story I'll tell. Believing gets hard when options are few. When I can't see what you're doing, I know that you're proving you're the God who comes through. And oh, but I know how you've always been my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll sing the song of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you've parted, the waves that I've walked. Oh, and oh, my God did not fail. I'm singing, oh, 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 it's the story I'll tell. Singing, oh, 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 I know it is well. Oh, it's the story I'll tell.
Wow, thank you, Pastor Kurt, for such a challenging message, really encouraging us to make the most out of the experience we've went through and really look back and take a story away from everything that you've faced over the last couple of months and to not take any of that for granted. I hope that you were able to find a mask that was laying around, and maybe you even need to go to the store and to get one yourself so that you can just jot something down on that, so that this will be a time that you remember what God did in your life and how He grew you in this season of life. I hope that you take that challenge and are able to do that. But you know, more than anything, it's just so important that we have God in our life that is leading us through the seasons of life that we go through. Maybe you don't have God leading you at this time. Maybe you've gone through this past season over the last couple of months without Jesus and God leading the way in your life. Can I just urge you that we will not make it through these hard seasons without God paving the way and leading us in that and really just giving us that strength and that wisdom. So if that's you today and you are looking to begin a relationship with the Lord, you're ready to make Him Lord of your life and you're ready to let God continue leading you forward out of this season, can I encourage you to take that step and to make that commitment in your life right now? Maybe that's something that you need to write on a mask, is that you're just dedicating your life to the Lord and you're ready to let Him lead you in everything that you do. And you can do that right now in this moment. And you know, that would be only the beginning step. You might be taking all sorts of different kind of next steps today, no matter where you're at in your journey. And here at Bridgewood, we are so passionate about helping you to take those next steps. And we'd love to come alongside of you and really just help you know what that looks like. You can take a look at the screen right now, and there's so many different ways that you can engage with us, and we'll be back in touch with you to really come alongside of you and help take whatever next step that you have in front of you today. And so while we believe that every person has a next step to take, if you call Bridgewood Church your home, we want to give you an opportunity right now to be able to give and continue supporting the vision and mission that God has called us to here at Bridgewood. We're so grateful for your continued faithfulness and support. You know, honestly, the month of July historically is a pretty tough month for us, just with the busyness of schedules and vacations. I want to encourage you to remain faithful through it, because even as we gather together in person, God is moving. God is calling us to something great in the future, and we're so grateful for you supporting and help us to accomplish what He's calling us to. So we're excited to be gathering right now this weekend, and if you want to join us next week, go ahead and hop on our website and make sure you reserve your seat for either our Goodrich campus at 9 a.m. or our Clarkson campus at 10:45, and they'll fill up quickly, so make sure you get on there and reserve a seat for you and your family. We're so excited to worship together with you, either in person or right here online, so we'll see you then.